Books.
Come join me as I do stuff and things. It's Joy of All Trades.
This is Joy of All Trades. I'm Bianca Swift, and today we are going to talk about the books I brought with me on summer vacation. Yep, that's what I'm doing. First YouTube video, and gonna talk about books. I had to turn the AC off to film because it was so loud, but is it worth it? I don't think it is. What kind of child labor laws? I'm not a child. So, I have split the books into 3 kind of categories. Books that I have finished, books that I am in the middle of reading, and books that I have not started. You can read a bunch of books at one time. It's like switching channels on a TV. If you don't like something or if there's a commercial break, you just, you know, it's like a remote. Anyway, the first category, books I have completely finished, is very small. First of all, I'm on summer holiday, so I have not been doing reading. I have been watching Stranger Things and sleeping. One of the first books that I did finish, I think I started and finished it nearly immediately, was Audre Lorde's The Black Unicorn. This is just a collection of, I think, some of her best works, and I had to read it because she's one of the great Black authors. Honestly, I loved it a lot. I have some difficulties with certain poems because I like to read poems that I feel like are easily acceptable by a lot of audiences. This one, you have to work for it, but I'm okay with it because of how good it is. There are just so many poems in here that I'm like, oh, I almost get it. I don't know, we love a little bit of mystery in our lives. That's one of the only books that I have finished. The only one. This other one, I don't know if it's cheating. I don't know if it's like a weird like self-flex. No, it is. The only other book that I finished is How Brilliant This Dark Glows, a book that I wrote. And of course I finished it, because I wrote it. So I had to have read it at least once or twice. 15 times. 15 times I've read it. Not for fun, for editing. I don't even like it anymore. And you honestly can't even really get it. Yeah, How Brilliant This Dark Glows, I wrote it. It's alright. I mean, what am I gonna say? The next pile of books is books that I have started. So this could be because of a number of reasons. Some of the reasons are because they're books of poetry, and I don't usually read books of poetry cover to cover. Sometimes I do. I read Audre Lorde's cover to cover, so, you know. Or sometimes I just read snippets or poems I think that are interesting, and so I think we're gonna start with the poetry books that I've started reading, because there are a lot. I read a lot of poetry. I write a lot of poetry. I'm a poetry specialization major. So there's a lot of poetry. Sorry. First book is The Poetry of Emily Dickinson. This is a collection that she did not make, obviously. She's dead. R.I.P. I honestly did not even want to get any of Emily Dickinson's poetry. The more I got older, the more I became, I was gonna say fluent in poetry, but I mean, yeah, I guess fluent in poetry. The more I wanted to read Emily Dickinson because I became to appreciate her just that much more. Because at first I was reading it and I was like, this is dribble, it's hard to understand. Some of it's the language is really tricky. She lived in 17 AD. You can fact check that. That's a true fact. And so I didn't think I would like it, but I like a lot of these poems. I think they're just, I was gonna say fresh, but obviously they're not fresh because Emily Dickinson is dead. But they're really fresh to me. I just love that I can tell that it was written by a woman and it seems so beautiful. It's really the epitome of poetry. And it's weird because the poems don't have any titles and they don't start or begin. So I'm just kind of picking it up, flipping to a page and doing what I want. There are no rules in poetry. Except when there are. Interpret that. The next book that I've started reading is Silencer, a book of poems by Marcus Wicker. So I got this in Barnes & Noble with my friend Nancy when we were sitting on the floor looking at the very small poetry section of the bookshelf and making fun of literally everyone. So I was reading this and there are so many poems in it that I feel really kind of hit home to me. This is a poem about blackness. I read a lot of poems about blackness because, spoiler alert, I'm a Caucasian. The first poem, I'm not gonna read it or anything. I'm pretty sure that's illegal. Who knows? But the title is Silencer to the Heart While Jogging Through a Park. And also what is that internal rhyme? But it hit me so much that I had to buy it. I'm not really going chronologically because you don't go chronologically in a book of poetry unless you do. Of course, there are no rules in poetry. So the next book that I'm reading is Black Girl Magic by the Breakbeat Poets Volume 2. If you can see this, Mahogany L. Brown, she's the one who wrote the original Black Girl Magic poem that has its own book, which the artistry, the writing, it's beautiful. It's so fun. It's so heart-wrenching. I kind of cried just a little bit, but not too much because I'm not a little girl or anything. It said a lot about like black womanness. I'm really hitting you guys with a lot for a first video, aren't I? Black womanness, you know, me secretly being a Caucasian, Emily Dickinson's dead. So I've been reading this, and first of all, the art's amazing. Can't argue with that. Even the racists have to agree. But it hits a lot of like every aspect of black. You can see that I've been reading it chronologically, and I marked where I was reading it with a Coca-Cola napkin. That's a little fun thing for you guys. But there's so many black experiences in this book, because there is a black experience, right? And then there's a black woman experience. But then there are black woman experiences that, though they are all different, they have a uniting point in that they all experience some kind of trauma of the body or of the mind or of the soul. Anyway, it's so good. I highly recommend this. This is another Spawn. Not for me, though. I only wrote one book. But this is a book by my first poetry teacher in college. His name is Ángel García. Shout out to you. I love you. He's not watching. And he wrote the book Teeth Never Sleep. That's a very cool title. Much cooler than my title. Which, rude, by the way. Very rude. But such a good title. He like put like a really cute, I don't know if you can read it. Should I read it to you? It's for Bianca. I know I will be reading your collection soon. Keep writing through it. Enjoy these poems. Let's call them babies. Enjoy these poems, my babies, my teeth. Me and the class, we came together and we bought him a mug. I'll put it on the screen because I think I still have the art because I know very little Photoshop and I use it occasionally. But I did make a lot of the art, and it's Teeth Never Sleep and Neither Do I, because it's like a coffee joke. So now he can be like a 75-year-old white dad and a Hispanic poet at the same time. I've been reading some poems and not others because some of this book is in Spanish and I can't speak Spanish. But I've been reading through it and I highly recommend this. Not just because he's a great guy, mainly because he's a great guy, also because the poems are lovely. The metaphors, exquisite. The internal rhyme, I'm not sure if it's in there, but if it is, I'm sure it's great. Another book that I'm in the middle of reading is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. So I cheated. I started reading this because I was like gonna read it before I watched the movie, but then I watched the movie. The movie was pretty good. However, this book, the one that I started reading, great. So good. I've gotten not far. I bookmarked it like this. Shouldn't do that. I'm sure there's so many like actual book readers who are like, she bookmarked it with the and then they melt. So The Hate You Give's title is obvious, spoiler alert, if you don't know. It's based off of the Tupac song that has the hate you give little infants F's everyone, which is Thug Life. It's so good. It's of course fiction, but it has a lot of roots in a lot of truth. What is it that art mimics life or something like that? Something like that. The writing is astonishing. It's great. It's great. Read it. One of the last books that I have been reading, which is not a poetry book, aren't you so glad? It's The Blood of Emmett Till. It was a downward point. The energy just dropped. I'm gonna take my glasses off because I don't need to see. So, The Blood of Emmett Till. The reason I haven't finished it, it's so hard to get through. It kind of reads like, not like a mystery novel, but kind of like a criminal thriller where they go back and they just recount like true facts from crime scenes. And it's so harrowing because there are a lot of things that we think we know about the Emmett Till story that we just don't. We just don't know these things. When you like read the book, you see that he truly did so little. And he was not even a teenager. I think he was 14. The reaction and the description in this book, like it's very clinical, the description, of course, because it's a true story and that's what they're trying to get across. But it's so sad. And I plan to read like 2 chapters a day. Since I've gotten here, I've gotten to chapter 9. I'm gonna finish it because I feel like it's very important for me too, but it's so sad. This is gonna ruin your life, and it destroyed mine, but also you should read it because I think it's so important for us to know the real history of things and not just assume we know what happened. It's a lot, but it's a very important read. This is by Timothy B. Tyson. The last book that I have started but not finished is The Wife of His Youth and Other Stories by Charles W. Chesnutt. This is, I think, a jump from everything else I've been reading, which is like very modern, very fresh, very fun. You know, I like to keep up with the kids. Okay, so full disclosure, I'm reading this because I read the other collection, which was The Conjure Woman, because this is my job, not to read these books. Wouldn't that be amazing though? I'm an undergraduate researcher. My job is to transcribe and encode Charles W. Chesnutt's letters to other members of the Black intelligentsia. Like I said, I finished The Conjure Woman in college. I want to read in college, like I'm out. When I was in college before this summer. I want to read The Mayor of Tradition because I think that's a very good book. I'm getting through this. I think I've read like one story. I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. It's not thick. It's like old reading, but it's really kind of fun. Fun the way that when you watch old movies, you're like, this is horrific. The film grain is awful, but I'm having a lot of fun. That's this book. So now is on to the books that I have not started reading at all. So these are books that I wanted to start reading, or I thought looked interesting, or they were gifted to me, or I bought them because I wanted to seem like I had it all together. I buy a lot of books to make people think that I have it all together. I don't. So, finished books. So let's start with some cute little thin ones. I got this from the university bookstore because you get a credit to like purchase things. You have to pay it back, but you get a credit to purchase things, and you have to pay it back, and it's bitten me in the butt a lot. But the first one I got is If They Come For Us. And I got this book because this is a book of poems, and I think, especially in this particular moment in our historical, milieu or something like that, it's really important to hear stories from people who don't look like you or who you don't necessarily connect with. It's about people who have migrated here, what they call illegally, even though that's another YouTube video that I could make. It looked so interesting, and so I wanted to start reading it. I don't know if I can recommend books that I haven't read, but I think you should get this. So this is really cool. So I got this book in my hometown. Not gonna tell you where that is. This is Ty Davis. Not to be confused with Kai Davis. Shout out to you. You're great. This is another book of poetry, and I got this because my mother went to a slam showdown, I think they're called. You don't even know. The poetry slams that Black people put on, they always start late, but they're really lit. So she got into the slam showdown where it was like 2 poets at a time kind of like fought to the death, and it was kind of like a March Madness moment where they like you like battled everybody at the beginning, and then the 2 best fought, and then the 2, you know what I mean, like that. And so this was the person who won, and my mom was so enamored with her writing that she bought me this book, and my mom's the one who got me to poetry in the first place, so if she recommends it, I recommend it. You know what I mean, dog? Like, I could definitely finish this if I started it. My mom highly recommends this book. Make of that what you will. This is a book that my old roommate bought me, The Old Times. It was literally last semester. She bought me this for Christmas, and I bought her something not as good, obviously, if I can't remember. But this is Disconnected. So this has a bunch of heavy hitters. It has Sarah Bond, it has Nikita Gill, who I follow on Tumblr, E.N.S. Thomas, that's it. But it looks really cool. Do I recommend it? I don't know yet. I'm sure I will eventually. Wait a second. There's art here, kind of. Wow. I really recommend it now. Look at that. Could not recommend enough. Also, Amanda Lovelace. She's on here. She's great. So most of these are books of poems. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm lame. I don't know what you want. Another book of poetry. This is Domestic Work by Natasha Tretheway. When I tell you that I met Natasha Tretheway in like a talkback, and she was the most eloquent, most beautiful, most enamoring human being in the entire world. Here's the thing, like, the secret about poets is we are good at words when we are speaking them to a crowd and nowhere else. Like, that's it. But she was like just hitting us with back-to-back solid vocabulary, strong metaphors. I was like, we get it, okay? You were the poet laureate. Get off your high horse. I'm kidding. I love Natasha Tretheway. Anyway, so I read her other book, Belloc's Ophelia. Woo! Great, great. And this one is Domestic Work. It's about like the African-American house workers, because I feel like so often we're like, oh, we don't want to talk about those people because they were the ones who kind of gave in, but they weren't. They were a huge part of the African-American experience, and they're very important to talk about. And Natasha Tretheway did it. Shout out to her. I have not read this book, but I'm sure it's great. So if you're actually reading these for recommendations, like, I don't know, get it? But I'm sure you're not. So another book that I haven't started but want to is Ariel by Sylvia Plath. I have not read a lot of Sylvia Plath, but I've heard such good things. And I've been trying to do a thing where I read... That's it. I've been trying to do a thing where I read... No, I've been trying to do a thing where I read a lot of the old heads. Sorry. A lot of the classics. Classics is white for old heads. That kind of like built the path for poetry to stand on today. Beautiful metaphor. Call me Natasha Tretheway. Also, I think my best friend bought this for me, Emily. Thanks to you specifically, and only you. The other book that I haven't started, these last ones are not poetry books. I'm sure you're so happy that I'm finally showing you an actual real book. This is The New Jim Crow. This is, I feel like, on the list of like every educated Black person. They're like, read The New Jim Crow. It's Between the World and Me. It's that one book by James Brown, Fire Next Time. It's Martin Luther King's book. It's that one Malcolm X book. It's Langston Hughes, and it's this. That's it. That's all you have to read to be an established, educated Black person. Those books. I had my mom buy it for me, and she bought like a bunch of Black books in bulk. And when she was checking out at the Barnes & Nobles, she said that the white elderly couple behind her were very scared. So I think that right there is why you should purchase this book. It's talking about mass incarceration in the Black economic and Black American sphere, and it talks about how it is essentially enslaving and harming a new generation of Black people. Like, it's just continuing to grow. I think it's just really important as a human to be well-rounded and educated. So, moving on. Last one, we're not getting any lighter. White fragility. I care about this topic a lot. I think it was written by a right guy. A right guy? A right guy and a white guy, am I right?
It was definitely a woman.
No, but I think it might have been written by a white guy.
It was not.
Robert Diangelo, or maybe it wasn't. Let me check before I'm just out here lying to you guys. Does he have a picture on the back of this book? He doesn't. Guess we'll never know. It was written by a ghost. And he said, check your privilege. So, White Fragility. This is a book about how difficult it is for white people specifically to accept their own racism and how they deflect. So this happens a lot, right? This isn't a book, honestly, that I should be reading because I'm not a white person. But I do think it's important for me to understand white fragility, and I also think it's important for white people to understand white fragility. So if you want to talk to Robin, I called him Robert earlier, his name is Robin. Her name?
Yes.
Their name is Robin Diangelo. So if you want to check it out, I'm sure it's great. Those are the books I'm reading and want to read. We might check back at the end of summer to see if I actually did any of that. So maybe I can hold myself to it. If you want to watch and subscribe to someone who looks like me but is prettier and more interesting, you can subscribe to my sister, Brie Care Amore. I will link it in the description below. I'm Bianca Swift, and this has been Joy of All Trades. Look at me. Real YouTuber, linking things, suggesting other YouTubers to watch. She did it! She finally recorded a YouTube video. I think the problem was I kept thinking, what do people want to see? I think I should just make things that I want to see, even if they're super lame, like book reviews. First video ever, doing a book review. At the end of the day, like, it's just for fun.